You have seen the movie. $200 million at the box office. Denzel Washington in a chinchilla coat. A table full of product. Brothers from North Carolina, loyal soldiers standing behind the man who built it all. Frank Lucas, the American gangster, the king of Harlem. The man who cut out the middleman and ran a product empire like a Fortune 500 company. That is the version Hollywood sold you. Now here is what his own brothers say actually happened. They say Frank did not build it. They say he did not bring them in. They say he left them in poverty in North Carolina while he lived like a king in New York. And when they finally came to the city on their own, he tried to stop them. They say the $5 million days were theirs. They say blue magic was theirs. They say the prosecutor that Russell Crowe played in the movie was not even chasing Frank Lucas. He was chasing them. 5 brothers from North Carolina who, by their own account on camera, took Frank Lucas's connect, took his streets, took his operation, and turned it into something he never could have built alone. And when Hollywood came calling 30 years later, Hollywood put their brother's name on all of it and erased theirs completely. This is the story American Gangster did not tell you. This is that story. You have to understand Harlem first, because the city the country boys walked into was not just any city. It was the capital of the black underworld in America, and in the late 1960s and early 70s, it was on fire. The legitimate economy had been pulling out of Harlem for years. The factories, the department stores, the employers who had once made it one of the most vibrant black neighborhoods in the country were leaving or had already left. What remained was a community with the buildings, but not the jobs, the population, but not the paychecks. And into that vacuum came the same thing that always fills it when the legal money dries up. The product. Heroin was flooding into American cities in this era. Vietnam was sending soldiers home with habits they had picked up overseas. Demand was exploding. And Harlem, with its density, its poverty, and its distance from the eyes of the rest of New York, became the marketplace. The Italian families had controlled the supply for decades. They brought the product in from Europe and sold it down through layers of middlemen, each one taking a cut, until by the time it reached the street, it had been stepped on so many times it was barely worth what people paid for it. The system was old. The system was slow. And the system was built to keep black dealers at the bottom, buying weak product at inflated prices from men who would never let them into the room where the real money was made. That is the Harlem Frank Lucas walked into. And what he did next is the part the movie got right. Frank Lucas did something almost nobody in the New York product trade had ever done. He skipped the Italians entirely. He flew to Southeast Asia, walked into a bar in Bangkok, and connected with a man named Leslie Ike Atkinson, a former Army sergeant from Goldsboro, North Carolina, who happened to be married to one of Frank's cousins. Atkinson had the connections. He knew the growers in the Golden Triangle, the poppy fields on the borders of Thailand, Burma, and Laos. And he could move weight. Frank cut a deal. He bought product at roughly $4,200 a kilo. The same product the Italian middlemen were selling in New York for $50,000. That margin is the entire empire. When you are buying for $4 and the competition is buying for $50, you do not just win, you erase them. The product came back to Harlem. Frank branded it Blue Magic. By his own claims, it was 98 to 100% pure when it arrived from Thailand. He did not cut it the way the competition did, which meant it was stronger, more addictive, and worth more on the street than anything else available. Blue Magic became the most famous brand name in Harlem. And here is the detail that matters for everything that comes next. Frank Lucas did not trust anyone from the city to run his operation. He believed city people would steal from him, get distracted by the nightlife, get sloppy. He only trusted people from back home, from North Carolina, country people, people who owed him, who feared him, who would not be tempted by the city because they had never seen anything like it before. So he brought his brothers up from the South, 5 younger brothers, moved them to New York, put them on 116th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues, the heart of the Harlem product trade. And the city gave them a name for what they were: country boys, Southern men in a northern city, standing on corners they had never seen before, moving weight for the most powerful black man in the American underworld. That is the movie version. The loyal boss bringing his blood into the empire. Family first. The Thanksgiving table. Denzel passing the turkey. Now here is what the brothers say. They sat down on camera years later and they told it plain. And what they said tears the movie apart, scene by scene. Frank did not bring them in. That is the first thing. They said it flat. He did not call for them. He did not set them up. He did not finance them. He did not want them in the game at all. They were poor. Back in North Carolina, in the projects, they were watching their oldest brother live a life they could not touch. He had the cars, he had the women, he had the money, and he was not reaching back. One of the brothers described it on camera. Frank introduced him to people in baseball, got him a tryout with the Yankees, got him into boxing, tried to push him toward anything legitimate. But the money in the game was bigger than anything baseball or boxing was going to pay. And Frank would not give them the product, would not put them on, would not break them off. So they did it themselves. They found their own connections. They started moving on their own, small at first, learning the hard way. They got beat. They got burned. They lost money to people who saw country boys coming and took advantage. But they kept going. And by the time they showed up in New York, they were not asking Frank Lucas for permission. They were already deep in it. And Frank's reaction, by their account, was not pride, it was fury. He told them he did not want them in New York. His own brothers, standing in front of him, and the man the movie painted as the family-first kingpin, told them to go home. They did not go home, because by then there were too many of them. In their own words, they had planted the seed. They had their own people, their own muscle, their own structure. They described it in terms that sound less like a corner crew and more like a military operation. 5 families, 75 men in each one, mostly black Americans, average age around 25. They marched into New York with nearly 400 men, organized, loyal, and ready to take the city, whether Frank wanted them there or not. And then they did the thing that, if you believe them, rewrites the entire Frank Lucas legend. They manipulated Frank into giving them access to his connect. Not asked, not negotiated, manipulated by their own word. The same pipeline from Southeast Asia, the same product, the same supply chain that Frank had spent years and risked his life to build. They got to it through him, around him, without him fully understanding what was happening until it was too late. And suddenly the operation did not belong to one man anymore. It belonged to the family, all of them. 5 brothers with 5 crews and the best supply line in the American product trade. And here is the claim that should stop you cold, because it is the one that contradicts every frame of the movie. The brothers say the real money did not start until they arrived. $5 million days. Blue magic moving at a volume that made Frank's solo operation look like a corner store. the expansion from Harlem to New Jersey, from New Jersey across the East Coast. They say that was them, not Frank. In their exact words, the money Frank was making before they came was like pennies compared to what happened after. They say they made Frank Lucas, not the other way around. And here is the detail that tells you the tension inside this family had gone past business and into something personal. Frank Lucas, the man American Gangster told you was the boss of the Country Boys, put a message in the newspaper, a public message, saying he wanted his streets back. His streets back. From his own brothers. Think about what that means. A public threat through the press against your own blood because they came to your city uninvited, took your connect, took your corners, and built your empire bigger than you ever could alone. That is not the behavior of a man in control of his family. That is the behavior of a man who has lost control of his family and wants the whole city to know he is not happy about it. The brothers said on camera they did not like those threats. Now here is the part the movie really did not want you to know. The character Russell Crowe played, Richie Roberts, the relentless, incorruptible prosecutor who spent years building the case against the American Gangster. The real Richie Roberts was a real man. He was the Essex County prosecutor. And by the brothers' account, he was not chasing Frank Lucas. He was chasing them, the Country Boys, the 5 families and their army of young men who had turned the Harlem product trade into something the East Coast had never seen before. Roberts wanted the machine, not the figurehead. Frank was a piece of it, but the brothers say they were the engine. And then the engine broke. January of 1975. A joint task force, 10 DEA agents and 10 NYPD detectives hit Frank Lucas's house in Teaneck, New Jersey. They found $584,683 in cash. Frank was convicted of federal and state charges. The sentence was 70 years. 70 years. The man Denzel played was supposed to die inside. But here's the thing the brothers want you to hear, the detail the movie skips entirely. Getting Frank did not end the operation. The prosecutors still wanted the Country Boys. In the brothers' own words, the law said, "We got Frank Lucas. That does not mean anything. How do we get the Country Boys?" Because by then, the brothers had built something that ran without Frank. He was the name. They were the machine. And then Frank did the thing that shattered the family in a way no arrest, no conviction, no prison sentence ever could. He talked. Frank Lucas cooperated with the federal government. He gave them names, he gave them routes, he gave them everything. Over 100 additional convictions came from what Frank told the authorities. 100, not 10, not 20. Over 100 people went to prison because Frank Lucas opened his mouth to save himself. He and his family entered the Witness Protection Program. His 70-year sentence, the one that was supposed to erase him, was cut to time, served plus lifetime parole. He walked out in 1981, after 5 years. 5 years. For an empire that moved, by the brothers' account, $5 million a day at its peak. And the brothers, the ones who say they built the machine that made those millions possible, watched the man who took credit for all of it walk out of prison by handing the government the names of the people around him, including them. That is the fracture this family never recovered from. The man the movie made into a hero is, to his own brothers, the man who turned on his family to save himself. The loyal boss who brought his brothers up from the country? They say he left them poor. The man who built the empire with blood? They say they built it themselves. And when it all fell apart, they say he was the one who gave everyone up. Now, in 1984, Frank got caught again, trying to exchange an ounce of product and $13,000 in cash for a kilo of cocaine. He was defended in court by, of all people, Richie Roberts, the same prosecutor who had taken him down. The man who chased the American gangster became the American gangster's lawyer. That detail is almost too strange to be real, but it is documented and confirmed. Frank got 7 years. He was released in 1991. And then, in 2007, Hollywood came calling. Ridley Scott directed it. Denzel Washington played Frank. Russell Crowe played Roberts. The movie earned over $200 million worldwide. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, and it told a version of the story that, according to the brothers, got almost everything backwards. The movie shows Frank building the empire, bringing his brothers in, running the operation as the unquestioned boss. The brothers say they built it. The movie shows Frank as a man of loyalty and family honor. The brothers say he left them in poverty and then snitched on the people who made him rich. The movie shows Roberts chasing Frank. The brothers say Roberts was chasing them. And the movie does not mention, not once, that after his first conviction, Frank Lucas cooperated so aggressively that over 100 people went to prison on his word. That is the erasure. Not just the brothers written out. The cooperation written out. The betrayal written out. The version that survived is the one that made Frank look like a tragic king instead of a man who saved himself at the cost of everyone around him. The brothers watched it from the outside. They watched a $200 million movie put their brother's name on everything they say they built. And they went on camera and told anyone who would listen that the movie got it wrong. Now I have to be honest with you, the way I always am on this channel. Everything the brothers say comes from the brothers. It is their version, told on camera, told with frustration, told with the bitterness of men who watched Hollywood tell a story they say is a lie. But it is their account. Frank Lucas told a different version his entire life, and he is not here to argue back. He died on May the 30th, 2019, 78 years old, in a wheelchair, a shadow of the man Denzel played. What is verified, what is not anyone's version, is this. Frank Lucas was convicted. He cooperated. Over 100 people went down on his word. The country boys were real. The operation on 116th Street was real. The brothers exist. They went on camera, and they told a story that contradicts the movie scene by scene. I am not going to tell you who is right. What I will tell you is this. American Gangster chose one version, put Denzel Washington in a chinchilla coat, and made $200 million on it. And the men who say they actually built the thing Denzel took credit for are still out here, still talking, still waiting for somebody to tell their side. So here it is. 5 brothers from North Carolina, country poor, left behind while their oldest brother got rich. And when they came to the city anyway, uninvited, unwanted, with their own army and their own plan, they say they took his connect, took his streets, and turned his corner operation into the most powerful product machine on the East Coast. And then the movie erased them. Frank Lucas got the chinchilla coat, the Denzel performance, the Oscar nominations, and the $200 million legacy. The country boys got nothing, except the truth, if you believe them, and a story that took almost 20 years for anyone to tell. You have seen the movie, now you have heard the other side.